So I'd like to start actually by asking everybody here in 2 minutes or less to give your talk about yourself, give your elevator pitch, who you are, what you do, and maybe most importantly, why are you compelling to a customer? And I'd actually like to start with Jared.
Sure. So I've been involved with Bitcoin since pretty much near the beginning. I, like Stefan, talked about the 7,000 Bitcoin transaction. I've lost quite a few from back when they didn't have much of a value as well. So I founded TradeHill in 2011. At that point, Mt. Gox was the only exchange out there, and Bitcoin hadn't really taken off yet. So I thought we needed an alternative. I thought we needed a second exchange, which seems kind of funny now. So launched that in June 2011. It took off much faster than expected. 3 of us wrote the exchange. We thought we might get $1,000 in or so. Right then, same day we launched, Senator Schumer did his speech about the Silk Road, which brought a lot of attention. Had $250,000 come in the first day. $1 million came in by the end of the week. Got up to 30,000 customers. The growth was a little bit faster than we had expected. It was a little bit difficult to deal with. Encountered some problems with Dwolla, which we were using, which refundable payment method, it turns out. Yeah, some of you guys know that story. So shut the exchange down. Bitcoin went through its little lull where it hit $2. Rebuilt the team, raised some money, and relaunched it on March 18th, which coincidentally this time was the day that FinCEN came out with their guidance on money transmission. So pretty ridiculous timing. I also own 20 Mission, which is a 41-bedroom hacker house, startup house in San Francisco. Got 60 desks downstairs for co-working, and do accept rent in Bitcoin.
Thanks. Erik, you want to?
Yeah. So my name is Erik Vorhees. Some of you know me from some involvement with Satoshi Dice, but my day job right now is with a company called Coinapult. We're based down in Panama City, Panama. Formerly, I was the head of marketing for Bitstamp, and Coinapult is currently a way to send Bitcoin to an email address or via SMS, so you don't need a smartphone. You can just send it through text messages. And the company is evolving quickly, and it will become more like a liquidity provider for B2B, enterprise-level Bitcoin acquisition. So that's what our team down in Panama is working on.
Great, thank you.
All right. My name is Pele Brengard. I'm from Kipochi. Now, Kipochi means wallet in Swahili, and that'll give a hint about what we're doing. We are launching the first mobile wallet with a focus on Africa. I'm based out of Nairobi, and 2 weeks ago we did the first M-Pesa to Bitcoin transaction. M-Pesa is a mobile payment system that's very popular in Kenya. 70% of all Kenyan citizens have a M-Pesa wallet. So now you can go into any M-Pesa agency, which is in every street corner in Nairobi, give them 1,000 Kenyan shilling notes, receive M-Pesa on your phone, and within a couple of minutes have Bitcoin. That's pretty much what we're doing.
Great, thank you. Tell us about yourself.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Nejc Kodric. My name is pronounced Nejc. I see some of you are already practicing, okay. So I am co-founder and CEO of Bitstamp, which is a Bitcoin exchange. So I got the Bitcoin virus in probably around March 2011. I know the price was around $4. So I got into Bitcoin through mining. So at first, my background is I had a company which was providing IT support to small and medium companies. So I had access to cheap electronics. So obviously I built some mining rigs and started mining. And then I decided I want to get into this whole Bitcoin thing. So I decided to buy a lot of Bitcoins, which was a bit inconvenient back then because there was only 2 large exchanges. So I spoke with Damian, who is now co-founder and CTO of Bitstamp. So we decided to make an exchange. It was a summer project, and we've been growing ever since. So we currently are, I think, largest exchange in Europe and second largest in the world.
Thank you, Nate.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Jeremias Kangas, and my background, I got the Bitcoin book at the same time, about and my background is more like software developer and lifestyle entrepreneur. And I run I run localbitcoins.com, but yeah, now it has been gaining some traction, really big traction, and I believe it will grow really big. So now I'm more like growth entrepreneur. So.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so I was hoping that you guys could share a little bit about some of your early customer profiles, and related to that, where you see one or a couple of the killer apps for Bitcoin potentially emerging that'll hopefully help to drive the growth of this industry. And maybe I could start with Pele.
Our early customers, the people who've showed most interest in us, are people in Kenya who have family abroad and wish to send money abroad. We also think there's obviously going to be a lot of people in the African diaspora abroad who'd like to send money into Africa. We are rolling out a non-web-based service that works on any feature phone in about 20 countries in Africa. So we think we can really reach this market very well. So it's normal consumers with some kind of international connection in Africa.
Okay, great.
So our early customers were mostly miners. So at the beginning, it was very hard to get money in because we had excessive amount of Bitcoins to be sold. So at the beginning, our price was usually lower. Well, it still is, but because of the different reasons. So yeah, mostly miners who are just testing it out, new services, putting their trust, and I really thank those who have supported us from an early beginning. And now we are receiving the investors contacting us through email, asking how can they buy larger quantities, so we're happy to assist them as well.
Okay, we have couple kind of customers. One kind of customers are those who, when like the other exchanges have their bank accounts frozen or regulation problems, users came to us because it's peer-to-peer decentralized model. But other way is also interesting thing about M-Pesa is that how M-Pesa spread so fast was because people were able to start local exchanges really quickly. And that's what local Bitcoins is trying to do on global scale. Like we try to make the tools so that everybody can set up a Bitcoin exchange really easily, and you don't need any expertise or any technological setup. You can just start doing it.
So at Trade Hill, our customers have shifted quite a bit. When we originally launched in 2011, it was Bitcoin early adopters. I think everyone here probably understands what I mean by that. A little bit more tinfoil and libertarian, which is fine. So people were a lot more concerned with anonymity back then. Now we cater to high net worth individuals, professional traders, and people that are very happy to KYC. We don't open accounts that haven't been we haven't verified their identities. We have an office in San Francisco. We've had a lot of people walk in, make copies of their IDs, sign documents, and then deposit $500,000. So it's a completely different market at this point.
I think a lot of our first customers with Coinapult were people who wanted to send Bitcoins to others who didn't yet know that they wanted Bitcoins. So currently, without something like Coinapult, if you want to send Bitcoin to someone, you need to know their Bitcoin address. And so if you're trying to introduce your grandmother to Bitcoin, having her set up a wallet is a little bit obnoxious. So something like Coinapult, you can just send Bitcoins right to their email, and then they can open it up and have Bitcoin right away without previously signing up for anything. Same with the phone system, the SMS system. People who wanted to send Bitcoins to other people who had never heard of it before, meeting them in person and paying for a debt, being able to pay them in Bitcoin without them having signed up prior was quite a big innovation there. So our business has changed a lot, and we're much more B2B now. So helping companies and institutions acquire Bitcoins large scale. This is something that's becoming more important as the industry matures, and it's not a bunch of 16-year-olds in basements anymore. It's institutions trying to figure out how to use this stuff for actual enterprise-level financial technology. So we're hoping to help fill that need.
Okay, great, thank you. So
we're focused on operating in the US. I think the US is a huge market. And in order to operate in the US and attract US customers, you're going to need to be compliant. And like Erik said, you can comply with US law. It's just extremely difficult. It's probably the most difficult in the world to comply with. So we are taking that approach. For one thing, we have 8 attorneys, which is terrible. We have more attorneys than we do coders, which will change soon, which is terrible for a tech company. So yeah, like you said, it's very difficult for a Bitcoin startup to form in the US because first off, you're going to have to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars just to essentially buy this compliance. On top of that, it could take years to get this compliance taken care of as well. We've been dealing with it for more than a year. So I don't know, that's our approach to it. It's definitely walk the line.
So I've seen the development of Bitcoin in 3 stages. So the first stage was just to have solid, secure exchanges. And then the next stage was bring it to mainstream. And the third stage is bring it to mainstream compliantly. So what we do is we do our best, but the exchange service is basically doing one thing, and that is bridging the traditional financial system with the cryptocurrency. So the cryptocurrency part of our business is not yet regulated, so there's no regulation to comply with. But we do comply with the traditional financial system. So we are doing our best to enforce KYC checks, AML policies to our customers, and to keep that part of our business compliant as possible. But there's no overall regulation or overall compliance. Hopefully that will change.
For us, it's pretty simple as we don't touch any traditional money. I don't think that's money, but anyway. So for me, I think that if you're an entrepreneur and you want to do something related to Bitcoin, just go for it. Don't worry about the regulations. Just do it and worry about it later. This is market which is really fast moving, and I think everything that slows you down is.
Spoken like a true entrepreneur. So is regulation and compliance good, bad, indifferent? Do you want more or less?
The U.S. regulations is a problem for non-U.S. companies. It's actually a very big problem for any non-U.S. company. If you have any kind of U.S. customers, or if you manage an exchange between a non-U.S. person and a U.S. person, and U.S. person is not just a guy with a U.S. passport. It's a very complicated thing. If you manage a $1 transaction, you are bound by U.S. regulations. And that's a problem. So we're actively blocking U.S. customers, both by IP blocking them and blocking U.S. phone numbers, because we require a phone number to open an account.
I think one of the big issues with regulation and the direction that the regulation is going, because it's not just that the regulation is bad today, but that you can clearly see the direction of this stuff, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse. And one of the main reasons it's problematic is because the regulators seem to have gotten into their heads that legal enforcement groups should not be policing. They should force the companies to do the policing for them. So in the financial world, companies are required to basically act as a police force and monitor and investigate and scan and report and do all these things that the police should be doing if they suspect illegal activity. There's no longer a presumption of innocence, there's a presumption of guilt. And as a financial company, you're supposed to go search for all the bad guys and report them back to the government so they can sit in their fat offices and just collect your taxes and throw you in jail. And more than just the moral problem of that, it becomes very costly and just plain difficult to actually try to monitor the behavior of every customer you have, especially in companies that have 10,000 or 100,000 or 1 million customers. And if you don't do it correctly up to the standard that the various governments wish, then you get in trouble. Handle a case. You don't need thousands of pages of regulation outlining every possible thing that you might do that someone else might not like. For a system to be built on an effective scheme of justice, you need a very simple rule, which is don't steal, don't defraud people, and don't cause harm to others.
Well, the one thing to add is that Bitcoin really can't be regulated, in my opinion. So of course you can regulate the companies around it, but like using cash transaction can't be regulated, and Bitcoin can't be regulated in the same way. So the direction is there, and the regulation can only slow it down. So.
Okay. Well, so let's look at this question from the other side of the coin then, because at the root of any successful financial or monetary system is trust, and it's either got to be regulated into place, or more likely it has to be built by the people who play in the ecosystem. So could you guys talk about what steps you have taken to promote and establish trust between you and your customers, or between your customers and your customers? And maybe Jeremias, you could start, because I know you have something that plays right into that segment.
Well, I believe trust will build in a different way. Actually, one of the early Bitcoin developers is developing something like that. It's a really cool project called Identify. Check it out if you have time. And well, it will be different, like the whole scheme of things. It will be global and.
Okay.
Well, I think everyone chooses how and to what level he'll trust. I always say that don't keep Bitcoins in an exchange, because exchange will not profit from it. It's just a liability. And to keep Bitcoins secure, you have to keep it yourself. So bank your Bitcoins. I'm not saying you shouldn't trust exchanges. I'm not saying that. But if you want, you choose how secure your Bitcoins you want to be. So.
I think one thing that I've done with TradeHill to kind of build some trust is we shut the exchange down and gave people their money back, which is somewhat, up to that point, was unheard of in Bitcoin. So I'm a little bit of a pioneer there. And I had one customer who's fairly wealthy, and he shot me an email a couple months ago, and he said, yeah, I think I left 4,600 coins on your exchange. They still there? Yeah, there you go. And he was shocked. He said, wow, you actually gave me my money back. The other thing that we do is we have an office at 1 Market Street in San Francisco. So anybody that wants to stop in, just shoot us an email, set up an appointment, come on in. Being available. When we all got into Bitcoin, nobody was using their real names. I remember there was a push on the forum for everyone to start using their real names. You remember that? One day, this is in, I guess, early 2011 maybe, everybody just started using their real names. They said this isn't the image that we want. So
we still have plenty of Satoshi Nakamoto's.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I have been using my real name from the start, or my real identity. But yeah, I think like your case is like reputation is also the new currency. Like you are all already pretty wealthy because you gave the money back, so people will trust you.
Sure, for sure.
One of Bitcoin's innovations, of course, is that it's the first payment system mankind has ever had in which you do not need to trust anyone if you don't wish to. And while you might need to trust an exchange to use the exchange, or trust a merchant to buy from that merchant, the ability to move money now doesn't require any trust. But whether before Bitcoin you're trusting a bank, you're trusting a PayPal or a Visa, you're trusting a central bank not to debase the currency, and now all that trust is wiped out. It's no longer important. So people are allowed now to deal with each other on a person-to-person or person-to-business basis, and it becomes much easier to establish trust because the number of people that you have to trust now are fewer, and they're more within your reach.
We operate in very low trust environments, and M-Pesa has already shown that people can trust each other just by getting an instant notification on their phone that they've received this payment. We are taking that and extending that with the Bitcoin protocol and actually showing people that you can go in and verify this transaction not just on our site, not just through our mobile web, but we'll have a link through to, well, we have a link through right now to blockchain.info so everyone can go in and verify. That's something people really, really like because they tend not to necessarily trust institutions.
I think you're going to see the entire ecosystem evolve as well. We'll offer audited financial statements soon. And you're going to see exchanges are going to push these standards, and people will stop using exchanges that don't adhere to these standards. You should have a segregated bank account.
So at least I know some of you either have chosen to or kind of forced to deal with more traditional banking and financial services entities. And I'd love to have been a fly on the wall for some of those early conversations when you came in and you say, well, I'd like to establish a relationship, and what do you do? Well, I trade in this this new cryptocurrency that's not fiat currency, not managed by anybody, and I imagine many of them went, huh? So I'd love to hear, and maybe Nate, you could start, and really for the benefit of the audience, talk about, what do you think you did right to get off on the right foot and build a good relationship with the more traditional financial services companies, which are typically not trusting, slow-moving, bureaucratic. But if you're giving someone in your shoes tips and tricks on how to navigate that roadmap, what did you do, and what would you tell them to do?
Okay, so that was pretty tricky back then. Establishing a banking relationship, a good, solid banking relationship, it wasn't that hard back then, because I just basically went into the bank, local branch, introduced what Bitcoin is, decentralized cryptocurrency system, and by the way, we don't know who made it. So imagine that pitch. But they went along, kind of observing what we're doing, grew, and what's very important is to have personal relationship, to go to the bank, speak with them, speak with high executives, introduce them. I actually spoke with very high executives, and to my surprise, they already knew what Bitcoin is in a nutshell, which surprised me a lot. And I genuinely think they are looking into it. Many Bitcoiners believe that banks will fight Bitcoin. I dare to say that they might embrace it, at least some that have vision of that it is possible to have decentralized payment system. Because even in Bitcoin, banking will be important. So some of the banks, probably, I know there are some in US that have been engaging also in Bitcoin atmosphere. So
I think the bank's biggest concern is not that they themselves have a problem with cryptocurrency systems, but they are living under the same regulatory environment that we live under, in which case they are required to report and police everyone that works with them. So if you're a company and you go to them and you say anything that's at all weird or strange or innovative, or they just don't know what it is, it's not really worth their time to give you an account. And they're not doing it to be malicious or anything. They're not doing it because they hate Bitcoin. It's just not, from a business perspective, doesn't make sense, because they then take on a huge unknown risk that regulators...
Yeah, but if you establish a good dialogue with them, and if you confront them in person, and if you visit them, educate them, and if you get their trust, it will work.
Also, it depends how much money you are bringing to them.
Well, yeah, obviously.
I think that's the most important.
Money talks, huh?
So integrating with the existing financial system is arguably the most difficult part about Bitcoin. And what he said about being upfront with the banks. Don't lie to your banks. When Mt. Gox had their funds seized by DHS the other day, he checked, no, we're not a money service business. Now, obviously that's the easy way, because sorry about that. So in the US at least, what's really great is FinCEN finally came out and said Bitcoin is money transmission. So they actually gave us a route to comply. So now you just have to get licenses in 48 states, which takes a year and costs a couple, $1 million. Before, there wasn't really a way to do it. So it still sounds terrible, but at least we have this path to go down. We used to be just this nebulous uncertainty that everybody was trying to figure out. So I think with all this regulation that's coming, at least we're being told how to comply, which is great.
So I think in general, financial services ecosystems are particularly rich and varied in terms of the functionality and the layering that has to be built up for the whole system to work, in a lot of cases at least. As you guys look out at the landscape and you see all the different companies that are out there, where do you see opportunities? Where do you see holes? What would you like to see more of, less of? What would you, if you're going to go start your next one, what would you do? How should this ecosystem really be built out? Start, anybody?
I think the idea of using Bitcoin as a title system is very, very interesting. So discussion earlier about the colored coins. There are various different kinds of approach of doing this. I think this is one of the most important things to get Bitcoin out and grow Bitcoin. This is, I think, the killer feature of it. And again, I mentioned I'm focused on the developing world, and title systems are a big issues. Some places it's impossible to get a title. Some places in Kenya it's very easy to get a title, including for someone else's property. So because of corruption and those kinds of things in Kenya, every single property right now has a hand-painted sign outside saying "not for sale," which is a common law protection against title fraud. So titling for a company, for property, real or virtual, those kinds of things is where I see Bitcoin is really, really growing.
I think there's two big needs. It needs to be easy for businesses to deal with Bitcoin. So when you're talking about professional traders, institutions, a company like my company, TradeHill, makes it easier for companies to deal with that. The other side of that is consumers. I think when I first got into Bitcoin, the biggest question was, what can you do with it? And we often struggle with that. And you say, well, you can pay anyone that'll accept it. And most people didn't like that answer. Now we have companies like BitPay, which is probably over 10,000 merchants at this point. So I think one thing that BitPay really does is they provide a great merchant solution, so anybody that wants to accept Bitcoin can. So that really increases the adoption. The other thing they do is they take away the currency volatility. So I think you're going to see a lot of companies that provide add-on services such as like removing the currency risk. So a lot of people say, well, I don't want to pay with Bitcoin because it might be $10 now and $15 tomorrow, and I don't want to accept Bitcoin because of that. So I think that's one of the biggest killer apps is removing the volatility and the currency risk.
I think perhaps the most important thing right now is for the market to become deeper. And for that to happen, people need to get away from Mt. Gox, because Mt. Gox has been the deepest exchange, but every time they come under pressure, they fail. People are scared to leave their money with Mt. Gox for both operational reasons at Gox and because of regulators around the world. So when people aren't willing to leave money at an exchange, the market becomes shallow and it becomes harder to get in and get out with any reasonable amount of money. So I'm very excited to see the recent decline of Gox has been very exciting for me, because I'm seeing other excellent exchanges start to fill that void. And I know there are other people building exchanges that are far more professional than Gox has been. And as they release and they become trusted, and you will see the market start to function much better, because people will be able to use the exchanges to a greater degree.
I personally network with a lot of talented developers who contacted us because they're in the need for an exchange, and it's very empowering to see how these brilliant minds put their effort, their time, their programming skills into developing apps that will support and gain adoption. So it's that's the most exciting thing about my work, to really get to know these people and share the ideas. And the question is the killer app. There are lots of killer apps.
What are some of your favorite? Like, talk about some of the ones you've seen that you really got excited about.
Well, some of them are not announced yet, so I cannot say. But there's a lot of exciting things coming, so I look forward to it.
Any particular, I don't know, feature sets or UI improvements that you think will drive user adoption to make it a lot easier?
I think what will drive user adoption is basically just education. What we need to educate people. I mean, Stefan said, that was over-exaggerated, but I like what you said. Everyone needs to get a science degree. Well, if we would, I personally made a paper back in 2011 in my college. I introduced Bitcoin, and some of my classmates were laughing at me. But the price of Bitcoin was $3 back then. So I think, and I'm seeing more and more people doing that. They do PhD, master degree. I mean, all these papers are being published. So I think we are going towards that direction to really just put the word out.
Well, the problem is that to use Bitcoin, people have to understand the really basic concept of the Bitcoin address and how to send the Bitcoin. And well, you can't skip that. You can't. You have to teach that to the people. But related to the previous question, I think the biggest killer app in the short term is gambling. But other than that, I'm very excited about the possibilities for the startups, like how to like the cost of doing a startup will go even more down with Bitcoin, as it will be much more cheaper to implement payment processing and payouts and pay-ins.
How do you guys plan to contend with the rise of probably multiple alternate competing systems and currencies? Do you embrace it? Do you just focus on Bitcoin? How do you guys see dealing with those? It's probably very different for each of you, but
I think most Bitcoin companies can very easily retool their systems to use any sort of cryptocurrency. Once you have the structure in place, it's somewhat modular. Bitcoin has a tremendous market share lead and a brand that is going to be incredibly hard to compete with. I think that any competing currency is only going to actually be a competitor if it offers some amazing new advantage. And I haven't seen such a thing. But of course, if that happens, everyone should be excited about it, because then you have all the promise of Bitcoin in an even improved format. So if Bitcoin becomes replaced with a competitor, perhaps that's even the best thing that could happen, because the only way it would happen is if it was a far superior currency. So far, I haven't seen it, and still looking.
For sure. TradeHill is a virtual currency company. I mean, I've been involved with Bitcoin since the beginning. I'm very passionate about Bitcoin. I'd like to see Bitcoin succeed. And we can argue and debate whether or not Bitcoin will succeed, but if it does or it doesn't, virtual currencies are already huge, and they're just going to get bigger. So like Erik said, if something does surpass Bitcoin, it is because it's better. So I'd welcome it, and we will trade other virtual currencies as well.
So I think Bitcoin just opened the door, changed the mindset of people that it is possible to have decentralized payment system that is self-governing. So any payment system that will deliver better properties than Bitcoin will prevail.
Yeah, we're also open to working with new kinds of cryptocurrencies, and there are also many different kinds of local currencies, and we are happy to work with any kind of local currency as well if it makes sense.
More interesting than the battle between various cryptocurrencies and each other is the battle between cryptocurrencies and other digital currencies like the euro and the dollar. That's going to be the more interesting duel going forward.
How do you see it playing out?
How is it going to play out? Well, of course, money is a good. It competes in an open marketplace unless people are regulated against it. The reason something like gold has not been able to compete with the dollar is because it's a physical item that can be very easily regulated. Because any company that transfers it can be known and prevented from doing so. You see companies like eGold get shut down. Now there is Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is superior to any fiat currency just by its characteristics. And so now that there's a superior money that also cannot be regulated, I do not see an outcome other than it dominating. Whether it's Bitcoin or another cryptocurrency, I don't see how the ability to transfer money and value anywhere in the world for free, how is that not going to displace a system in which you have to wait 3 days for a digital currency transfer of your dollars to another country, and you have all sorts of restrictions and all sorts of fees? Our children are going to sit back and kind of laugh at the world that we grew out of and all the arcane garbage that we have to put up with today.
So there are a lot of VC types out in the audience, and presumably you guys are getting a fair amount of attention these days, and there's certainly been some institutional financings. What is your take on taking in venture money? Do you think it's good for this sector? Will you take it at some point? Anything you'd like to tell the venture capitalists in the audience that they should or shouldn't do, or how they should think about the space?
Sure, I'll start. We raised a venture round, but it's not public yet, so I won't say who or how much or when. But my advice to VC companies is that if you sit around and wait to find one perfect company to invest in, you're going to be too late. Nobody, including the Bitcoin experts, know how this industry is going to move and change. It's very dynamic. So if I were a VC and in charge of a bunch of money, I would simply acquire lots of Bitcoins on one hand. And on the other hand, I would sort of go with the shotgun approach, find a number of companies that all look somewhat interesting, not try to assume that I will figure out which one will be successful, and put a little money in all of them, because most of these Bitcoin companies are not highly capital intensive. They do not require millions of dollars to get going. So you can scatter some money around several companies and buy some Bitcoins, and it would be very hard for you to miss out on this if it works.
No, for sure. I think on the entrepreneur side, if you want to open up an exchange, which I wouldn't suggest, you definitely need to take VC money, unless you can bootstrap it, unless you've got that kind of money. The amount of lawyers you need, the compliance that you have to pay for, it requires, I'd say, where Erik said most Bitcoin businesses don't require a lot of capital and a lot of people, he's right. The exception to that would be exchanges. And exchanges aren't terribly profitable either. So, yeah, and what he said about the shotgun blast, there's a lot of companies that I heard in the beginning that were starting up, and I said, it's kind of interesting, but didn't really expect that much. And they just really, really blew up. So you never really know what's going to happen in Bitcoin. It's a surprise every day.
Before I said a VC should buy a bunch of Bitcoins, and that's not just because I want the price of Bitcoins to go up. If you want to understand the Bitcoin ecosystem, you have to understand that each Bitcoin is really like a share of this giant new tech startup. And so if you just see Bitcoin as the currency and not a share of a cryptocurrency world, then you're missing the point. There's only 21 million Bitcoins, and if Bitcoin takes over, it doesn't really matter which companies do it. Anyone who's holding Bitcoins is going to benefit from that. And this has created a very cohesive and mutually beneficial world, I think, even among Bitcoin companies who compete with each other. They're very friendly and helpful, and there's a lot of mutual respect. And I think this is because we're all sort of in the same boat together. We all own Bitcoins. We're all shareholders in this project, even if we are part of different companies.
I agree with you both. They should buy a lot of Bitcoins, and startups need investment. We have not raised any capital yet, but we've started in different times when there wasn't need for capital. But now I think it's hard to start without capital.
Yeah, I think VCs should focus on areas with potential growth, regional areas with potential growth, like a lot of the buzz is about U.S. startups right now, and there's definitely a market in the U.S., but I suspect the companies like people like TradeHill and Coinbase are going to be sitting on that market. But it's a much bigger market, and the real growth is going to be seen outside the U.S., I think. So I think particularly European VCs who are here today should focus on that. We're not looking for funding ourselves. Our parent company is very profitable doing mobile transactions in Africa. We currently process 5 million transactions a day in 20 different countries in Africa. We're fine, personally. So.
Yeah, I agree that a lot of the opportunities are going to be outside the developed world, because as problematic as the US and European banking systems are, in general they work. You can send money around. There are several billion other people in the world that do not have bank accounts, but they have phones, and they need a payment system that will allow them to simply leapfrog all the stuff that the developed world has been using. Bitcoin is going to be an amazing blessing for them. So VCs should I think not just focus on the developed world, people who have computers, but focus on people who are actually going to be using a brand new financial system.
I'd also look at some of the crazy little apps that you sometimes see people like, I just launched this or this in Bitcoin Talk. Look at those kinds of things, because one of these or multiple of these are going to be whatever the killer app is in the future. And I mean, exchanges is something that we need, and we need them in every single market. But the real killer app is going to be some 16-year-old guy who just is excitingly announcing his new site in Bitcoin Talk.
Yeah, also VCs, the Bitcoin companies don't just need your money. A lot of them are hobbyists. A lot of them are very young. A lot of them are brand new entrepreneurs. They need professional expertise on how to run companies, on how to do proper systems and all that kind of thing. That can be more valuable as an investment than just the money.
I agree with Erik. I mean, if you tell the bank, like, hey, these guys are legit, they're not scam artists, we back them, that would do a lot more than actually giving them the money.
Yeah, we have like a situation where we have been cash flow positive for some time, so we don't need that money so badly. So we haven't been looking for funding that aggressively. But if we invent some hole to put the money into, then we might do a round.
Evolving quickly, and it will become more like a liquidity provider for B2B, enterprise level Bitcoin acquisition. So that's what our team down in Panama is working on.
Great, thank you.
All right. My name is Pelle Brangard. I'm from Kipochi. Now, Kipochi means wallet in Swahili, and that'll give a hint about what we're doing. We are launching the first mobile wallet with a focus on Africa. I'm based out of Nairobi, and 2 weeks ago we did the first M-Pesa to Bitcoin transaction. M-Pesa is a mobile payment system that's very popular in Kenya. 70% of all Kenyan citizens have a M-Pesa wallet. So now you can go into any M-Pesa agency, which is...
So launched that in June 2011. It took off much faster than expected. 3 of us wrote the exchange. We thought we might get $1,000 in or so. Right then, same day we launched, Senator Schumer did his speech about the Silk Road, which brought a lot of attention. Had $250,000 come in the first day, $1 million came in by the end of the week. Got up to 30,000 customers. The growth was a little bit faster than we had expected. It was a little bit difficult to deal with. Encountered some problems with Dwolla, which we were using, which refundable payment method, it turns out. Yeah, some of you guys know that story. So shut the exchange down. Bitcoin went through its little lull where it hit $2. Rebuilt the team, raised some money, and relaunched it in...
So I'd like to start actually by asking everybody here in 2 minutes or less to give your talk about yourself, give your elevator pitch, who you are, what you do, and maybe most importantly, why are you compelling to a customer? And I'd actually like to start with Jared.
Sure. So I've been involved with Bitcoin since pretty much near the beginning. I, like Stefan, talked about the 7,000 Bitcoin transaction. I've lost quite a few from back when they didn't have much of a value as well. So I founded TradeHill in 2011. At that point, Mt. Gox was the only exchange out there, and I basically, Bitcoin hadn't really taken off yet. So I thought we needed an alternative. I thought we needed a second exchange, which seems kind of funny now.
In every street corner in Nairobi, give them 1,000 Kenyan shilling notes, receive M-Pesa on your phone, and within a couple of minutes have Bitcoin. That's pretty much what we're doing.
Great, thank you. Tell us about yourself.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Nejc Kodric. My name is pronounced Nejc. I see some of you are already practicing. Okay. So I am co-founder and CEO of Bitstamp, which is a Bitcoin exchange. So I got the Bitcoin virus in probably around March 2011. I know the price was around $4. So I got into Bitcoin through mining. So at first, my background is I had a company which was providing IT support to small and medium companies. So I had access to cheap electronic.
On March 18th, which coincidentally was, this time was the day that FinCEN came out with their guidance on money transmission. So pretty ridiculous timing. I also own 20 Mission, which is a 41-bedroom hacker house, startup house in San Francisco. Got 60 desks downstairs for co-working. Do accept rent in Bitcoin.
Thanks. Erik, you want to?
Yeah. So my name is Erik Vorhees. Some of you know me from some involvement with Satoshi Dice, but my day job right now is with a company called Coinapult. We're based down in Panama City, Panama. Formerly, I was the head of marketing for Bitstamp, and Coinapult is currently a way to send Bitcoin to an email address or via SMS, so you don't need a smartphone. You can just send it through text messages. And the company is evolved.